She was always the quiet one. The kind of woman whose voice barely rose above the rustle of a newspaper, whose presence was felt in small, steady ways. Warm dinners, folded laundry, the same soft kiss on her husband's cheek each morning. Eleanor Whitmore, 72 years old, had lived her life in a modest clapboard house at the edge of Brattleboro, Vermont. She'd been married to Charles Whitmore for 50 years, half a century of tradition, devotion, and routine. She believed she knew every inch of his soul. Until he died. Charles had always handled the attic. It was his domain. Old tax records, military medals, yellowing newspapers stacked by the seasons. So after the funeral, when Eleanor finally summoned the strength to clean the space, it wasn't curiosity that guided her hands. It was habit. One more thing to manage. One more memory to box up. She didn't expect to find the envelope. It was tucked behind a chest of tools, aged paper sealed with wax, brittle and faded. Her name written in her husband's handwriting. Eleanor, only if I'm gone. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, a letter. A confession. Charles had written it 30 years ago. In his youth, during the early years of their marriage, he'd had an affair with a woman Eleanor never knew. The letter detailed his guilt. But more than that, it revealed that he had fathered a daughter. He'd supported the child quietly over the years. Trust funds, secret visits during business trips. A second life carefully maintained just beyond Eleanor's grasp. He begged for her forgiveness. But he never gave her the choice to grant it. She stared at the words, her entire body hollowing out. 50 years of marriage, and he had kept this. Buried it in the beams and insulation of their home. What else had been real? Did he ever love her? Or was she simply the wife who made life easier? Eleanor didn't cry that night. Not at first. She just sat at the kitchen table with the letter pressed to her chest, remembering all the Christmases, the anniversaries, the miscarried child they'd mourned together. Had he been thinking of his other daughter while holding her hand in the hospital? It was the betrayal that cut deepest. Not the affair. Not even the child. It was the silence. The theft of her right to know. The next morning, Eleanor did something she hadn't done in years. She got in her car and drove to the library, logging onto a computer. She searched the name Charles had written in the letter. Margaret Finn. She found an obituary. Margaret had died in 2009. Survived by one daughter. Clara Finn Wyatt, age 41, residing in Concord, New Hampshire. Eleanor sat with the screen aglow in front of her. She could have walked away. But she didn't. She mailed a letter. Not to Clara, but to Clara's employer, a prestigious law firm. Just a short note. I knew your mother. I'd like to talk. A week later the call came. Clara had a clear, precise voice. You knew my mother? She asked cautiously. Eleanor responded with truth. I was your father's wife. There was a long silence on the other end. I always knew about you, Clara whispered. He showed me pictures. He said he couldn't tell you. It would destroy your life. Eleanor's voice was like a flint striking stone. He destroyed it anyway. They met a week later in a quiet cafe between Brattleboro and Concord. Clara looked like him, same sharp brow, same blue eyes. But there was a strength in her that felt unfamiliar to Eleanor. They talked. 4 hours. About Charles. About Margaret. About growing up in the shadow of secrecy. I was the secret, Clara said quietly, but I was also the loved one. It should have made Eleanor bitter. But instead, it made her angry at him. Charles had played them both. Pitted loyalty against ignorance. and walked away a hero in both stories. That night, Eleanor lit a fire in the fireplace. She took down every photo of Charles from the mantel. One by one she placed them in the flames. Not out of hatred, but out of justice. He didn't get to be remembered like that. Over the next few months, Eleanor and Clara built something strange and sacred. It wasn't quite family, but it wasn't distance either. Clara had children. A quiet boy who liked books and a girl who drew flowers on napkins. They began calling Eleanor Granny, a name she had never imagined for herself, but wore like an earned medal. But the final act of Eleanor's story, her revenge if it could be called that, wasn't fire or fury. It was a will. She rewrote it. She gave her house to Clara's children. Left behind journals with truths, photos annotated with stories, and one final message sealed in an envelope. He took away my power to choose. I am reclaiming it in death. And when Eleanor passed quietly 2 years later in her sleep with a book on her chest, it was Clara who cleaned the attic. She found the letter Eleanor had written to her, tucked inside the same box Charles had once hidden his own. Your father kept me in the shadows, but with you I stood in the sun. Thank you for letting me be more than a memory. This isn't a tale of rage. It's the story of a woman who lost everything she thought was true, and still found the strength to write her own ending. Because some secrets are buried not in the ground, but in silence. And some revenges aren't loud. They're quiet, precise, and final.